All companies must face highs and lows. But few arrive within days of each other, and in such stark contrast as they did at the co-op. The high point was when the Queen opened Angel Square in September 2013, says co-op chief executive Steve Murrells, referring to the food and insurance group's towering head office, which looks like the backdrop to a dystopian science fiction film as the nighttime Manchester rain lashes down around it. The gleaming building signified what was then the peak of the group's ambitions. Murrells continues, sadly that was brought back down to earth just a few days later with the crisis in the co-op bank, and equally some of the failings of the ex-bank chairman. He is talking about Paul Flowers, who had left the bank just months earlier. Flowers became known as the Crystal Methodist after the Mail on Sunday revealed allegations of drug use. He was, in reality, merely an outward symbol of the group's deeper internal woes.The co-op bank was failing in the aftermath of the financial crisis and needed rescuing. Aside from the personal tragedy, the business had lost its way. It just so happened that it was the co-op bank that failed first. The food business, when I first joined the year before, was on a similar trajectory, Murrells says with characteristic bluntness. Fortunately, by the time the bank began to teeter on the edge, the £7 billion food business had already cracked on with a new strategy. It stopped trying to compete with the big supermarkets and returned to the local community convenience stores, where its heart and its history belonged, people popping round the corner for a bag of shopping. Crisis gives you permission to change things quickly and radically, says Murrells, who took the top job in March. I believe that the co-op still had a strong emotional connection with the country. It's just that we failed for many years. We pushed customers away, he says. A veteran of the cutthroat world of grocery retailing after lengthy stints at both Tesco and Sainsbury's, he has suffered his own family tragedy. Two and a half months ago, Murrells lost his wife Nicola at the age of just 42 after a long fight with bowel cancer. He has a 5-year-old daughter from the marriage.The couple were told last year that she may have had only 9 weeks left to live, just as Murrells was offered the promotion. Bravely, she urged him to accept. Nicola died just 2 days before dinner to raise funds for her Kiss My Ass cancer charity, which has raised £2 million. In what must have been a virtually impossible speech to deliver in front of an audience of hundreds, he described her as a mother and a wife that taught me and our young daughter to never give up. Nicola could persuade you to do anything. She would all too often say to me, "Everything is possible if you set your mind to it," he said. It's a philosophy he is applying to the co-op, which is firmly on the right track. The food business, which now has 3,200 small stores on its books, after buying shop group it.The this month, has now seen 14 consecutive quarters of underlying growth. As evidence of the mounting success, Murrells points to the membership reward scheme, which returns 6% of all money spent on co-op goods straight back to members' cards and community causes. That has generated £90 million since its launch in January, helping to counter the dividend cut imposed in 2013. The majority of that has already been transferred back to members, with £30 million still remaining to be spent in stores in the coming weeks. But £20 million will be handed over to community causes. You can look at it as an instant dividend, at a time when people really need help, he says. He believes austerity and the continuing pressure on household finances leave no room for complacency. Inflation is putting a lot of tension into people's lives. I think it's probably going to get a bit harder before it relaxes again, he says. He expects the squeeze to last another 12 to 18 months, with the premium retailers, Waitrose, Marks and Spencer and Whole Foods, now most vulnerable. Murrells, who wears a practical, cozy-looking blue sweater over the top of his work shirt, looks more like a sociology lecturer than a CEO, and he can sound a bit like one too. Every thought and step the group makes must be consistent with the co-op's value system, he says. The co-op is about wanting to make a real difference in society. But we need to recognize that a strong, commercial co-op allows us to be in communities and do good. Co-op last week opened the door to dozens of tech startup firms within its Manchester complex, which will be run as a not-for-profit project for firms. Its funerals business, the biggest in the country, is doing its it.is offering free funerals for children, which was extended to include 16 and 17-year-olds in March. He slams pressure selling in the market, which came to light last weekend. The market needs a complete review from top to bottom. He says, when you are dealing with that really difficult moment of losing someone, I think standards, honesty, all those important ethical values, should be a given. Any fly-by-night can get in, and I don't think that is very good, he says, speaking with the authority of his own heartbreaking personal experience. He wants to see the market regulated and thinks it should be investigated by Business Secretary Greg Clark. Murrells says its essential co-op takes a different perspective. We are not at the behest of large financial institutions. We are owned by our 4.5 million members, and we can see that money goes to the communities in which we operate, rather than seeing it all going back to the City of London. Where we go next is where we feel markets are broken, where we feel trust is low, and where they are not working for people: housing, education, care, energy, health. It's a long list, he says, and he is not even ruling out a return to banking once the organization fully separates from its existing financial division in 3 years' time. I think Brexit tells us we are a divided nation. I think the co-op is starting to build this momentum, and over the next 5 to 10 years I hope we will achieve a movement again. I was at the G20 on stage in front of 10,000 people talking about water poverty. I want our annual meeting to be as full and as dynamic as that, and to focus on future campaigns, modern slavery, loneliness. I think that will start to create that movement again. The closing speech sounds almost political in tone, presidential even. The group still maintains a political donation of £750,000 a year to the Cooperative Party, which famously never contests a seat against Labour. I would be cautious about describing this as a political movement. We have deliberately stayed out of politics. This movement is about changing behavior,